It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy The Grind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another episode of The Grind Line here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by my defense partner, Devin Little. Devin, how's it going? We got, what? We're into September now. We're September 2nd, and we are closing in this month. We're going to have hockey to actually watch preseason, but who cares? We love hockey. It doesn't matter when it's on. We got the preseason. We got Traverse City. Lots of fun stuff coming up. So, but it's not here yet. So we still have, we still have to do these previews and stuff like that. Well, we're still a ways away. But Devin, how's it going?
I'm doing great. You're exactly right. We're that much closer, but we're still grinding through the preview stuff. We are definitely we are putting the grind in grind line this off season, let me tell you.
We definitely are. I did stuff to talk about. We keep doing our weekly shows, so we haven't taken a break. We've only taken a break once, maybe once or twice, I think, during the off season. But yeah, we're still going at it. And with that, let's get started with the show and our one good, one bad for the past week. I'll go first. Good. I just said it. It's September. We're gonna have hockey this month, so we have Detroit Red Wings preseason. We got, like I said, Traverse City. Lots of fun coverage to do with the prospects, and I did my Emil Vero one prospect. Unfortunately, he's not playing in Traverse City, but who cares? He's still a prospect and playing Grand Rapids. So yeah, that's my good, is that we can actually say hockey's going to happen this month, which is awesome. And my bad is, like I basically just said at the beginning, it's still not here yet. We're still a couple weeks away, and we're still going to be talking about this and previewing this stuff. But we probably will have like maybe a preview of Traverse City. We can start talking about a bit closer to it. But that's still a bad, because we still can't watch hockey, and we're still anticipating. All right, Devin, what do you got for a one good, one bad?
My one good for the week is going to be the establishment of the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League. Exciting times, exciting, just overall exciting. Love to see the game grow. Especially, having the opportunity to highlight all the women athletes out there. And then the one bad is that there isn't a PWHL team in Detroit quite yet. Only 10 teams, I believe. But hey, just like the NHL, or the NHL started with 8 teams, it's at 32 now, so there's always room for growth, and I'm sure that the women's league will be growing over time as well.
Yeah, I was disappointed not to see Vancouver on that list as well, or somewhere around Vancouver. But yeah, it's exciting to see where all these like star women will go, because Sarah Nurse, you've got that's the only one that came to my mind right off the top. Like there's other but these star athletes that are going to be, we only see them in the international tournaments usually. Hopefully the TV coverage is pretty good for these. I'm hoping that TSN or in Canada picks it up, and ESPN in the States. I'm hoping that some of these major networks get on board, and we're not even just scrounge for watching these games. I'd love to watch the games. So we'll see how that all kind of plays out as they get this all organized, because they still have to get the teams together and picking what do they call it? I guess they call it an expansion draft as well.
It's like a beginning draft. Like
draft. What did they call it when they started the?
It's like a fantasy league where like you start out with nothing, right? Like it's kind of cool. You don't really see that, right?
Yeah, that's gonna be fun to follow and see how that all goes. So, but yeah, that's definitely a good. All right. Well, as we get through, we're getting to the end of our Atlantic Division previews here, and we're up to the Ottawa Senators. And as you watch this, there's also an Ottawa Senators season preview out. If you are inclined to watch that and get even deeper dive at how the Senators are going to look and how the Red Wings are going to possibly beat them this season. because they could be competing with them for a playoff spot as time goes on, because I think they're in that division, in the conference that could potentially be in the wild card discussion. So this is going to be a pretty good preview to see how they kind of match up. So let's start with, as we always have done, let's start down the middle with the Senators, and they are pretty deep. I mean, I would say at least for the top two lines, you got Tim Stützle, who's established himself as a pretty good player in the NHL. He almost had 100 points last season. Josh Norris injured for most of last season, but he's a pretty good scorer. He's proven that in the past. Right now, as the cap friendly is showing, Shane Pinto is centering the third line, and Mark Kastelek is centering the fourth line. So, Devin, what do you think about the Senators matching up with the Red Wings? Because I say they have pretty good two centers, I think, leading the way.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that how you feel about their center depth compared to Detroit's might honestly come down to how you feel about the debate of Stützle or Larkin.
Yeah.
The top centers, go figure. And for what it's worth, they're both really good players, both really good top centers. And if you're maybe even looking for more of a in-depth comparison on the two of them, Stützle's kind of like that playmaker that competes his butt off, and that's Dylan Larkin. I can see if Brady Tkachuk wasn't already like entrenched in Ottawa as the captain, I wouldn't be, there's another universe out there where Stützle is potentially their captain, but in this universe, he's not. I personally, I think right now entering this season, I would pick Larkin over Stützle just barely. And I think that gap can definitely be overcome because Stützle is 6 years younger than Larkin. And there's a lot of room for him to grow. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he has maybe even more of a breakout year than he's already had. So like I said, Larkin right now, but stay tuned on that one. And then as you get down the depth chart here, it's kind of a similar story where the Senators guys, whether it's Pinto or Norris, they're younger guys, right? Younger guys that maybe aren't proven but have a ton of potential and have at least shown flashes of some really good potential and really good ability at the NHL level. And then you have the Red Wings group, which are more veteran, Comfer, Cop, those guys, even Veleno, who don't have the same upside as the Senators guys. They're also just older. But there's maybe more of like a certainty factor in that what you're getting out of them. And Cop and Comfort specifically, they have that versatility where they can kind of play anywhere in the lineup and they can play a defensive role and whatnot. I think if I'm looking long term, I like Ottawa's group more. They're just younger, right? And that's not to downplay the fact that the Red Wings have Casper and Danielson in the system, but they're not. We can't talk about them right now. That's forecasting. Entering the season, I give a slight edge to Detroit, but I think if we were to check in on it halfway through the season, I wouldn't be surprised if I were to say that Ottawa's group was a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, especially Norris, had him coming back. Hopefully he's fully healthy because, like I said, he didn't play all last season. And he's only 24 years old, too. So he still has a lot of that potential still coming. And Pinto had a heck of a start last season. Was in the conversation of the Calder very early on. It just looked like he was scoring like couldn't stop scoring. But then he tailed off and still ended the season pretty good. But just didn't keep scoring. So I mean, he's not fully solidified as the third line center going in, but you got guys like Ridley Gregg potentially could get in there as well. So, but yeah, they are definitely a younger group that could potentially, have more potential in the future, right? So we'll see how it all kind of goes as time goes on. Right, the wingers, you already mentioned Brady Tkachuk. You got Vladimir Tarasenko added in the offseason at free agency. They got Drake Batherson, who's again an up-and-coming star, still only 25 years old. Kubalik added from the Red Wings. They got Matthew Joseph, Zach McEwen, Parker Kelly, other guys kind of thrown in there. What do you think about the Red Wings compared to the Senators on the wing?
I think out of all the wingers that we've kind of compared here, I think this is like the closest comparison. Because the Senators have their, high end guys. You've got your Kachucks, your Giroux, your Tarasenkos that and your Bathersons for that matter. Um, that you can kind of write in ink that they're
Mhm.
going to be top in the top six, and they're going to be capable, and they're going to do what you expect of them. And you look at the Red Wings guys, and you see Lucas Raymond, you see Alex DeBrincat, who obviously came from the Senators, David Perron and Jonathan Berggren and others, and you can see that like they both have veterans that like have been there, done that, and are consistently productive in their time in the NHL. And they have the younger guys where it's like, could they explode this year? You don't know. There's all this upside. And then as you get down the lineup, it's a mix of guys with upside. It's a mix of guys with some physicality and can bring that sandpaper to the lineup. And just guys that are kind of like value guys. Like I think Kubalik is kind of a value guy for them because I don't know if he's going to be in their top six, probably more of a middle six guy. Um, Maybe even bottom six, depending on how the lines shake out, right? But I think that's good value to have down the lineup. And I think that that's kind of like where Kubalik was for the Red Wings last year. And that's kind of where we've been talking about Berggren maybe being. Um, and then we even, maybe Marco Casper makes the team and maybe he can be in the middle six and provide some upside there. This is close. Like I said, I think that, oh man, I think that the Senators have maybe one more of those like high end guys in the top six than the Red Wings do. The Red Wings don't have a guy like Brady Tkachuk. They just don't. And I think maybe that's kind of a tiebreaker for them here. But like I said, this is close. I think I give a slight edge to Ottawa, and I think it's because of the presence of a guy like Tkachuk.
Yeah, it sounds like the same what we talked about when we were talking about the Panthers.
Yeah, literally, right?
Same thing. Like they don't have the same players, and these guys are different types of forwards that Red Wings just unfortunately they just don't have those guys. And they may have one in the future. Who knows? I mean, I don't know if they really have anyone in the system that could potentially be that. But yeah, they just don't have that guy. And yeah, I do agree. I think they do have I forgot mentioning Giroux in there. He can also play center, so he's also in that center discussion, I guess, as well. So, they do have a lot of high-end talent, and that's why this is going to be an interesting battle throughout the season because they are really close in the wing at forward. So, yeah, it's going to be fun to see how they all kind of play against each other throughout the season. As long as everyone is healthy, you can see how they match up. Right, defense. Now the defense is again, this is an interesting group between the two. You got, the Senators there. They added Jacob Chikrin last season. They have Thomas Chabot, who's arguably a top pairing defenseman on most teams. And then you got Jake Sanderson, up and comer, 21 years old. Artem Zub is a pretty good. He's 27 now, but he's probably in his prime years now. Eric Brandstrom, a little bit, is interesting in Ottawa. He's up and down. They're not sure what they have with this guy. And then Hamonic kind of rounds out. He's that veteran physical guy. And then they got a young guy too, Jacob Bernard Docker, who could potentially be in that mix as well. How do they match up? Like, I think one thing with them is I think they have a similar one to the Red Wings at the top, especially with Chikrin and Chabot. You got Zator and Walman. I think again, Zator is probably comparable to Chabot, but better defensively, maybe. What do you think about the Red Wings defense compared to the Senators?
I like I like that thought there about comparing Detroit's top guy to Ottawa's top guy in the blue line. So little tidbit about me. I actually low key really like Ottawa's blue line group.
Mhm.
And it's because especially after adding Chikrin, I think that kind of like pulled everything together.
Yeah.
Shabbat's kind of an underrated guy across the league. He's not like he's never going to win a Norris trophy, I don't think, but he's very capable and very deserving of the role he's had. And he's also like kind of been forced into being their top guy for a while
Mhm.
they were like doing their rebuild and whatnot. So he's got a lot of let's just say a lot of bags under his eyes because of what he's had to go through, but he's kind of on the other side of it now, and he's like the undisputed leader on the back end there. Chikrin, really savvy get out of Arizona, especially the price they paid.
Mhm.
And he's in his prime or entering his prime, depending on how you want to look at it, 25. And then Jake Sanderson is looking at the rookie class from last season, I think he's one of the more underrated guys too, because he didn't really pop off in terms of offense, but he showed he could belong on the blue line at a very young age, and that's hard to do. Um, and then even there's other guys with upside. You talked about Jacob Bernard Docker and Eric Brandstrom. There's guys that can continue to get better in this group. And that's already complementing the guys that we already know are good in Shabbat and Chikrin.
Mhm.
So um, like I said, I like their blue line a lot. The Red Wings, in a few years, I'd like to think that this is what their blue line's going to look like, where they have their established guys like Zator and Walman and maybe an Edvinson at that point. But then that's kind of the point there is that the kids will be also there. You'll have, an Edvinson, maybe that's a comparable to Sanderson.
Mhm.
Albert Johansson, William Wallander, Sendin Pelika. These guys are coming, but they're not there yet. Um, so again, like I talked about with the forwards and the centers, where like a few years from now, I think the Senators might have that kind of locked down. I think in a few years from now, I think Detroit might have that locked down, but I I still even then, even 3 years down the road, Shabbat's only gonna be 29, Chikrin 28,
Mhm.
Sanderson 24. So um yeah, long story short, I like Ottawa's defense better than Detroit's.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just because, as good as Sider is, as good as Walman is, you get down the rest of their blue line, and there's some good guys there, don't get me wrong, but there's just not the same amount of upside and not the same amount of just not the same amount of excitement that I
Mhm.
get out of that group that I get when I look at Ottawa's group. So give it time. But as far as this year's concerned, I think Ottawa takes this.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think the thing is with Chikrin compared to Walman, if you're comparing the top pairing, uh, it's the thing is Walman's not established as a top pairing
Yeah,
defense. He was good last season, like he really paired well with Sider, but you can't say he's like legit top pairing defenseman on any team. While Chikrin probably on most teams, he's at least a top for sure top four. But I mean that's why he was so widely sought after at all these trades. A lot of teams wanted this guy because of how good he is two-way defenseman. So yeah, I do agree. I think for established defensemen, and nothing against guys like Petrie and stuff like that, because these guys are established NHLers. But Goss Despair and Justin Hall, these guys are all good defensemen. But like you said, I think the upside and maybe the is a bit better this season. So we'll see. We'll see how they match up. But overall, I think the Red Wings defense is a bit weaker than Senators for at least right now. But like you said, in the future, that may change for sure. Right now, the goaltending is, I think, pretty close. And you have, Billy Husso against Jonas Corposalo, who kind of broke out of his, when you say mini slump, I guess, in LA, looked really good. And now he's in Ottawa under a $4 million contract. It's okay. It's more in that mid range. And then you got Anton Forsberg as the backup. youngerish, maybe. He's 30. He's not really young anymore. I thought he was still pretty young. He's actually younger. He's actually older than Korpisalo by a year. What do you think about the tandems between these two teams?
Well, I do agree. I think it's actually pretty close. And I think maybe the thing that differentiates them is Reimer and just the fact that he's older than anybody that we're going to talk about here,
Yeah.
and he also just has more of a track record, right? Um, but I don't think Reimer is what really, tips the scales one way or another. The way I kind of look at it, I kind of look at this as Ottawa having two Husos, um, whereas Detroit has the one, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because Huso's proven that he is capable of being a starter in spurts at the very least. We have a lot of hope entering this season that he's going to be able to be a starter not just in spurts, but just the whole way. But that's kind of the point, is that he's not proven that he can be consistently the guy. But he's still good enough that like there's some confidence there. And then you have good depth after him with Reimer and Lyon. Whereas with Ottawa, like you just said there, Matt, Korpisalo has looked good at times. He's also looked really bad at times. He looked really good in Columbus this year and it's past year, and that led to him being traded to the Kings. And he looked pretty good with the Kings as well, and that earned him a nice big paycheck from the Senators. And now they have to hope that he is that guy and not the guy from the previous season, because the guy from the previous season, probably belonged in the AHL, quite
Yeah.
frankly. And then you have Anton Forsberg, who is another one of those underrated guys across the league, because he's actually been pretty solid his more or less his entire career. He just doesn't he's always behind somebody on the depth chart. He's always just not the guy and not in a position to be the guy. And even like when there are times for him to really, carry the mail and be the guy, the consistency is just not there, or just eh. Um, but at the end of the day, he's still a really good quality goaltender, and I think that I wouldn't be surprised if this year Forsberg wound up getting more starts than Korpisalo, even though Korpisalo is getting paid a heck of a lot more. And it's just because we don't know about either of them. Both of them can be good. Both of them can be not that good. So there's, like I said, they have two Husos. And I think that the low end of their Husos is maybe a little bit lower than Detroit's Huso, the actual Huso, OG Huso, if you will. But then the backup battle is, I guess it depends on how you feel about that. I maybe this is my bias of watching the Red Wings more than I watch the Senators. I'm gonna pick the Red Wings on this one. Huso, we've talked about this plenty of times. Huso was a bona fide MVP candidate through the end of November last season. I don't think, well, no, Korpisalo was definitely an MVP in that one series against Tampa Bay back in the day. But that was back in the bubble. That was a while ago.
Yeah.
So he hasn't played like that since then. But I guess case in point is that I've seen more from Huso more recently than any of the other guys we're talking about here. And I also just think that I trust his ability. I trust in him to like round back into form, maybe more so than I do Korpisalo or Forsberg. But this is close. This is like really, really close. I'm just siding on Detroit here because like I said, I have more familiarity with Huso, and what I have seen out of Ottawa's guys has been very hit or miss.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it's so weird, and I don't know, it's interesting. You got Korpisalo and Forsberg were both former Blue Jackets draft picks. They both played in Columbus too. They got a Blue Jackets tandem. I didn't realize that. I'm pretty sure Forsberg was a Blue Jackets draft pick too, and he was. Yeah, so it's gonna be interesting. And Forsberg's coming off a really bad injury too, broke his MCL were done. I think his knees were wrecked. So I don't know. We'll see if he can bounce back from that injury, because that's a pretty bad one to rehab and come back from. So we'll see how he does this season. Okay, well, there's our preview for the Senators. It's going to be. I think what we kind of looked at is that the forwards are. Well, you said it was better, or Red Wings were better there. Senators were better in defense. Goaltending, Red Wings. So I guess the Red Wings are better. But yeah, so let's do our off the rush. How do you feel they're going to fare against the Senators this season?
You know, I'm going to say they're going to fare well because of how things ended against the Senators last season. They had those back-to-back games right before the trade deadline, and Ottawa just bullied them through both games. I think that everybody who was on the team last year has those games kind of stored away in the memory bank. Even Coach Derek Lalone has mentioned that recently about how that was like a turning point of them like, all right, yeah, we're going to sell this year. We can't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so I think that when they play Ottawa, they're gonna be coming out with a vengeance. They need to, prove that they're not that soft team anymore that can just get pushed around. And also, like we kind of mentioned, Ottawa and Detroit are like right in the same category within the Atlantic Division. So, if one of them's gonna make the playoffs, they're in direct competition for those spots. So there's plenty of motivation for the Red Wings to, really take it to Ottawa when they play them. So I'm gonna say Detroit's gonna show why they went out and got all that muscle and Alex DeBrincat, ironically from Ottawa, and put their money where their mouth's at, basically.
Yeah, it's fun. That's gonna be the first thing is you're gonna with DeBrincat versus Kubalik, I guess, in the first game against the Senators. So we'll see how they do their first meeting, which is that's what I'm looking up right now. Is quickly. They're playing them their first game October 21st. So and that is
first
in
month
Ottawa.
Of the season.
So it's at 10 at yeah. So it's gonna be really early on. We'll see them. So
you know that Ottawa will be doing everything they can to shut DeBrincat down, given how things transpired there. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, basically.
Yeah, we'll see. They've got actually a pretty good slate of Atlantic Division teams to start. They got the Lightning to second game of the season, and then Blue Jackets in there. You got lots of Metro, but yeah, they got some Eastern Conference right away to get going. So we'll see how they all start the season. All right, let's before we get to our next half, which we're going to talk about a couple player previews quickly, we got to pay the bills. So here's a message from the Hockey Writers.
Interested in writing for the Hockey Writers? If you have experience writing about hockey, are passionate about the sport, and are looking to take your writing to the next level, the Hockey Writers could be the place for you. Here at THW, you will have the opportunity to hone your craft at one of the world's largest and most respected hockey publishers. You will have control over what you write, be able to seek out media credentials, and be supported by a large network of writers and editors. Plus, you'll get paid for doing it. If you're interested and want to know more about team openings and requirements, please visit the Write for THW page on the Hockey Writers website. A link to that page is also listed in the description.
All right, as we continue our player previews, we're gonna shoot out two of them here, and a forward and a defenseman. So we're gonna start with veteran David Perron, who had his first season with the Red Wings last season. Pretty good season. He had 24 goals. Just an alternate captain as well. 56 points. Played all 82 games, so that wasn't injured at all. Had some injury problems the previous season, so it's great that he had a full season with the Red Wings. So, Devin, what do you expect from Perron this season?
To put it simply, more of the same, really. 24 goals and 56 points last year with the Red Wings, playing primarily with Dylan Larkin. That was his most common line mate there. I don't know if that's going to be the case this season, obviously with DeBrincat coming in. He still might get some time on the opposite wing because I think he could fill that role. But my point there is that I don't know if he's going to play as much or in has as high of a role as he did last year, and it's probably for the best because he is 35 years old now. And that tends to be around the time where players start to, enter the back, the down years of their career, basically. I'm not saying that Perron's going to completely fall off. In fact, I wouldn't, like I said, I expect more of the same because I think he's capable of it, especially if he's going to be played lower in the lineup. He 20 goals, 50 points. That's kind of where I'm setting the benchmark. If he falls a little short in either category, that's fine. Because I don't think that they need him to be a star for them. I think that they just need him to be a good veteran leader, and a solid piece in like their middle six that can contribute on offense and on special teams. I think that one little thing I will throw out there too about Perron is that if the Red Wings fall short of their goals this year and they're kind of out of the playoff race when it's trade deadline season, I think Perron is kind of a slam dunk to be in trade rumors and on the move. Like I said, he is 35 years old. I'm sure he wants to be playing for a cup, in the final years of his career. And I'm sure that under the right circumstances, the Red Wings can get something nice for him. So, if he is he's either going to be a leader that helps Detroit, push for the playoffs this year, or he's going to end up being a solid trade piece, that helps another team push for the cup. So, yeah, long story short, more of the same, and hopefully he's still wearing red at the end of the season.
I was about to say that he's only signed a 2-year deal in free agency last offseason. So it is his contract year. So I was going to say about this trade that he could potentially be traded at the deadline if the Red Wings are inclined to do so because they're out of the playoffs or whatever. Hoping that's not the case. But he could definitely be that type of. He's probably the perfect rental because veteran, plays in the playoffs, plays really well in the playoffs as well. So he's a guy that would probably garner a lot of interest from those contenders to try to grab some scoring. So we'll see what happens with him. Hopefully he does have a good season and the Red Wings have a good season, that he's still here at the end of the season. Right. So. All right, moving on to our defenseman, Jake Walman. We've already mentioned him in this episode already, but and we've also mentioned him quite a bit this season in this offseason. So had a good season last year, 9 goals, 18 points, paired really well with Zator, as we've said. But yeah, he's a definite bright spot on this Red Wings team, especially with the trade that they got him when he was just a throw-in, really, when they did get him. So he's ending up being a pretty good core piece of this Red Wings team. So what do you expect from Walman this season?
Kind of like Perron, more of the same, but I will also amend that and say more. Because you're right, he was a really good fit alongside Zator, but he didn't end up next to Zator until like halfway through the season. And so now the question becomes, what does it look like when he plays with Zator for a full season? It's clear from his point totals. He had 9 goals and 18 points in 63 games last year, but he's not going to be like a big points guy. He's 27 years old, as much as like you kind of think of him as like a young guy because he just hasn't been in the league that long. He's 27. He's in his prime. So I think that what you see is more or less what you get in terms of his offensive production. Maybe you get a little bit more, with more time on the top line and with Zator and whatnot. But I'm not expecting him to explode out of nowhere at this point in terms of offense. But that's fine because what made him so good alongside of Zator was his overall predictability. There were times when Zator was playing with Sherratt where Sherratt would pinch and he'd be, deep in the zone and Zator wasn't prepared to cover. Like there was just, they were both gunslingers. And the thing about that is you need someone to cover for the gunslinger. And when you have two gunslingers, no one's covering. And that's what happened a lot with Sider and Sherratt. And then Walman came in and he kind of settled things down. There was some instant chemistry there, and Walman just kind of was predictable for Sider, and that's what you need. And I think the thing about Walman too is that we talk about this with a lot of different players over it seems like the last couple of weeks specifically, but you need those defensemen that don't show up on the score sheet and you don't even really notice because they're just doing the quiet things that take care of the game and make sure the puck doesn't end up in your net. That's what Jake Walman does. He's kind of everything that the Red Wings were hoping that Gustav Lindstrom was going to be, but I digress on that one. And I think that's fine. I think that's great. I think that if Walman can continue to do what he did last year and maybe take it to another step, that's only going to help Sider more. That's only going to help the Red Wings more. And we just talked about it when comparing to Ottawa that the further you get down the Red Wings depth chart, the less exciting it is. So the more that Walman can handle, the more that Walman and Sider can handle together. It's probably for the best because that means that the other guys aren't on the ice. I hate to put it like that, but I want to see Walman. My hope, my expectation is just more of the same, maybe a little bit better. But my hope for Walman is that by the end of this year, he's kind of well known league wide as one of the most underrated defensive defensemen in the league because he just takes care of business and you don't notice him, but he does a lot to help his team, and that's exactly what it looked like last year.
Yeah, I was just, when you're describing him, like Emil Vero. That's
Emil Vero. Yep.
But still, like those types of guys, and you need them. I mean, that's just to complement the guys like Sider, Quinn Hughes, Thomas Chabot. Those types of defensemen that have a bit more offense to their game. Sider, I think, is better defensively than a lot of those other two names I mentioned, but I think he definitely needs a guy that he doesn't have to worry about. And that we've said that with Sherratt, that he may have was worried a bit more on the ice when he was like, oh, I don't know, can I go? Can I? Right. I think that's one thing about these guys. They need to not worry. They can just be like, I just want to go on instinct. I don't want to worry about my partner screwing up. And that's, I think, what Sider got with Walman, that he started feeling more comfortable. He could play his game a bit more. And there you go, right? But he did play with the Kaiser in his rookie season. It didn't seem to bother him, so I don't know. I'm not sure maybe that's not true.
If there's one thing I've gathered from Sider's first 2 years, it's that anything you might think would work with Sider, it apparently isn't. You would think that DeKaiser would not have worked, but boy, did it.
Yeah.
And then Sherratt, you'd be like, I mean, he's close to DeKaiser, right? That would work. Nope.
I don't know. It's interesting, but we'll see. We'll see if Walman and Sider can form a super pairing for the whole season, because they definitely showed it at the end of the last season. So hopefully it'll continue. Right off the rush. Now, we kind of went through, but do you see David Perron getting traded? Even if they're in the playoff race, because it is a guy that would garner some good assets, even if they're in that mix. Could they survive with trading him?
I'm gonna say yes, but with the caveat that a guy like Casper would have to be pushing, and that's how they create room for him, basically. Or like Carter Mazer too. That's another guy that I think could fill a David Perron role. If there isn't somebody that can slide right into that spot, then no. But if they have kids knocking on the door, and boy, do we expect they will be, then yeah, I think they could definitely survive that move. I think it'd be interesting to see them do that if they're still very much in the playoff race. But hey, why not have your cake and eat it too? You can be in the playoffs and still gather future assets.
Yeah, that'd be the ideal situation. But it's hard to give up a guy like Perron because he is a playoff performer too. Because and of course you wouldn't want to be trading him to a team that could potentially kick you out of the playoffs with them being added. Very, very tight or tenuous situation there. But we'll see how it all plays out. But thanks, Devin, for joining another episode of the Grind Line. We talk Red Wings for another week, grinding through this off season. We are getting closer to talking about actual Red Wings hockey happening. We have the preseason in 2 weeks, 3 weeks as we record this. So it's coming up fast. We got like I say, Traverse City. We're going to start talking more about that while it's going on, which will be fun. And just keep following us here. We'll keep grinding the episodes out. Throw those comments in the comment section below. Keep them coming. We'll start answering more of the questions. Get Comment Corner back soon. So keep them coming. We'll put them in our comment bank there. And follow us on X, Twitter, whatever, THW Grindline. And also give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. But of course, if you're watching this, you're probably subscribed to the channel. But if you're joining us for the first time, hit that subscribe button. And we also got a Detroit Red Wings Substack that started. I said it comes out every day. It doesn't. It's like 3 times a week, I believe. But whenever it comes in your inbox, it shows all the great articles that are through the hockeywriters.com. So if you're not checking out the site, it'll be given you in the morning as well. So check that out. And until next time, we'll see you on another episode of the Hockey Writers Grind.